Today, the security company G4S failed to appear before Parliament's Justice and Correctional Services Committee to try and explain exactly what happened when Thabo Bester, convicted of rape and murder, managed to escape from his prison cell in May last year by faking his own fiery death. Now, the company was expected to appear, along with the Correctional Services Department and the Police Minister. And in fact, yesterday, G4S issued a press release saying it was disappointed it wasn't invited. Today, however, their lawyer saying Parliament needed to have summoned them before they could appear. Well, I'm joined now by Glynnis Breytenbach, who's a member of Parliament's Justice and Correctional Services Committee. Glynnis, thank you so much for joining us. You know, I was trying to work out who made the mistake here. Did the committee fail to properly invite G4S, or is G4S sort of trying to basically get away from being accountable?
Well, it's hard to say what motivates G4S. As you mentioned, first of all, they issued a release saying they would love to have been invited. So sorry they weren't, because they want to cooperate. And then, having been invited, everyone was invited last week. DCS was invited. It was very clear that DCS was expected to bring G4S along. In that fashion, they were invited. The minister, the deputy minister, the judicial inspectorate, the police component, everybody was there. All very busy people, all busy diaries. They all managed to come. And last night we received a letter from G4S saying, sorry, but they can't come because they need to be summoned because they want the protection that the Powers and Privileges Act offers them. Well, you know, in my view, that's a little dodgy. And then this morning, we find that the committee has been joined surreptitiously by an advocate who has a watching brief for them and his attorney. And when I say surreptitiously, they didn't up front come and introduce themselves to the committee and say that we're here, and this is why we're here. And this is, you know, what we intend to do here today. So if they weren't invited, you know, what were their legal representatives doing there in the first place? So I find their whole approach and their whole attitude somewhat disingenuous.
I would imagine that the committee has many questions, as do most South Africans. But just give us your assessment. I mean, you've worked in the field of prosecution professionally. Now you're in Parliament as an MP. But from your perspective, what are the big issues that you really want to get to grips with?
Well, you know, as a committee, we have oversight over the Department of Correctional Services, and the Judicial Inspectorate. We have a close working relationship with the Committee on Police, and of course we have oversight over the Department of Justice, and in that fashion over the Minister. So it's the duty of the committee to A, know about these things, and B, inquire about them. And this happened, you know, almost a year ago, and yet this was never reported to the committee, not once in all the appearances between now and a year ago when Bester escaped. Has this ever been brought to the attention of the committee? Not by G4S, not by the Office of the Minister, not by Department of Correctional Services. So we have serious questions about that. It appears that some of them, or all of them, were not even aware of the fact that he escaped, and until quite recently were saying that he died in his cell. So how exactly this happened when the DNA results apparently were available quite a long time ago, it remains a mystery, and that's certainly something that we'll be delving into quite deeply. And then, of course, there's the extremely worrying issue of public interest. Not only do the public have a right to know, this man is a convicted rapist and murderer on multiple counts. He's clearly a dangerous person, a danger to society, and the courts quite correctly decided that he should never come out. Yeah. Now he's been out and about and living the life of Riley for the last year, and you know, ordinary citizens have been, you know, exposed to this unknowingly, but more particularly the women who testified against him, the rape survivors. They weren't informed. They were given no protection. They haven't been sensitized. Can you only imagine how it would feel if one of them were to bump into him at a restaurant or at a shopping center? how unbelievably vulnerable it would make them feel, and the danger that that holds for them, you know, with regards to possible revenge or whatever. The whole thing is so unacceptable. It's completely outrageous. Completely outrageous.
Did you manage to get into any detail at all today? For example, for me, the one big question is how soon did G4S, obviously you wouldn't have got an answer on that, but how soon did Correctional Services become aware that there was a suspicion that it might not have been Thabo Bester who died in that cell? I mean, do we know? Because it seems from some reports that it was very clear early on that there were big questions around this so-called death.
Well, you know, the publication Groundup has done unbelievable work on this matter, and it's really thanks to them that the public and us and everybody is aware of this debacle that is played out. I mean, you couldn't. It sounds like a Hollywood movie. You can't make this up. And I don't know when the Department of Correctional Services became aware. That's certainly one of the things that we're going to probe. We didn't get anything done today. The committee members felt very strongly that G4S should be present and that they should have the first opportunity to present and be questioned, because we don't want to put the cart before the horse. So they're the initiator. We must start with them, and to do it any other way would make render the process really quite nonsensical. So we didn't do any work today, very regrettably, and we're grateful to all the people, the very busy people who came, but unfortunately they'll have to come again.
Yeah, so has a date been set? We did hear earlier that looking for a date very soon. Any idea how soon that might be?
Well, we'd like a date as soon as possible. Of course, G4S let us know rather coyly that they'll be available after the Easter weekend. Thanks very much. I'm not sure that Parliament can get its processes in order between today and the Easter weekend. You know, we have to write a letter to the Speaker. The Speaker has to then summon them to Parliament. So it's entirely, possible that it can't happen this week, but certainly it will happen next week.
I've got to ask a very quick final question. Them saying that they need a summons because there's some sort of, the legal protection parliamentary privilege. Are they right about that? I was under the impression that any appearance before a parliamentary committee potentially has the privilege. You explain it to me, though.
Well, the members of Parliament have the privilege. Members of Parliament are protected by that privilege because clearly we have to probe issues and often make allegations that are scantily founded, and so members of Parliament have that protection. So the complete freedom of speech without the fear of being prosecuted. What they're after is a different kind of protection. I get the impression that they're after some sort of indemnity, which they certainly can't get, and Parliament can't give, and certainly we wouldn't consider giving, even if we could, but we can't. The protection that they will get is simply this. If they're summoned to Parliament, the evidence or the information that is imparted before the committee cannot be packaged just like that and used against them in any court case, be it civil or criminal.
Okay.
So
if they'd appeared today, if they'd appeared today in the absence of that summons, as you'd expected them to, would that have been any different? Would that protection be any different?
Well, no, because it's still only information, it's not evidence. It's the same difficulty you have with the information imparted at the Zondo Commission. It's not really evidence. It needs to be collated, put together, authenticated, and then used as evidence in a court. So any evidence they gave to, any information they imparted today could simply not just be packaged off the committee's recordings and used as evidence against them. No.
Yeah. Very interesting.
That's what I find the approach somewhat disingenuous. Yeah.
Thank you so much for chatting to us. Really appreciate it. Glynnis Breytenbach, a member of Parliament's Justice and Correctional Services.